Hello everyone, I hope you guys are having a wonderful day, and today we are recreating the Saturn V and Apollo 11 missions in Kerbal Space Program. We're going to be recreating the Saturn V rocket with the Making History DLC part. So I'm currently performing a gravity turn to try to get into orbit. Usually you're supposed to be 45 degrees by 10,000 meters. Unfortunately, I am not doing that because the first stage does not have the best thrust to weight ratio, and we're about to see stage separation now. Fun fact, those rockets you see there are actually the correct layout for the Saturn V. They were supposed to keep the stages from hitting each other during separation. Now what we're going to be trying to do is try to get as much horizontal velocity as possible to try to get an orbital insertion. And while we're trying to get that orbital insertion, you can see those 5J2 engines, or well, they're not called J2 engines in the game, but they're obviously replicas. You can see those 5J2 engines firing to get the velocity we need to quite almost get into orbit. We are still going to need slightly more velocity to get into orbit, and we have stage 2 separation with the exact layout of the rocket motor still intact. And that last J2 engine is going to give us enough velocity to get into orbit. And I am currently trying to get into stable orbit, and we are good. Our periapsis is above 70 kilometers. And now I'm going to start planning the maneuver node to try to get us on a trajectory to the moon. Now, unlike the Apollo 11 mission, we're not going to have a free return trajectory, where if we miss the moon or for some reason something goes wrong, we just loop around and come back. I've not figured out how to do that in Kerbal Space Program because the moon and Kerbin are wildly off scale from the real thing. Well, you technically can do it, but your apoapsis is something like 100,000 kilometers above the moon, which it's not really realistic, noting that the Apollo missions orbited something like 11 kilometers from the moon's surface. And we are burning now to try to get our way to the moon. And like real life, we are going to have the third stage crash into the moon. The Apollo missions had the third stage crash into the moon for science. They would put these seismometers on the moon to detect earthquakes, or technically moonquakes, I guess, and it would detect the third stage hitting. And now we are doing the reconfiguration where the lunar module docks with the command and service module docks with the lunar module. And I'm not being totally realistic here. I used the SAS module to rotate the command module around to get docked instead of using reaction control thrusters. That's just to keep it from going off course. And we are about to dock with the LEM, and we are docked. Okay, now all we have to do is separate the lunar module from the third stage, and then plan a burn to reorient ourselves so we don't go crashing into the moon. And since we already have that burn planned, we are just going to do that burn and hoping not to hit the third stage because that is pretty close. And now we're just trying to get it to the correct area, and there we go. Just do some minor adjustments with the reaction control system. When you're doing fine adjustments, especially if you're going to Joule, not so much for the MUN, but it still works, you want to turn SAS off. This will cause your craft to rotate, but it still works. Now we are doing the burn to try to get into lunar orbit, or lunar orbit insertion, I should call it. And this doesn't require a lot of delta V. Because this is Kerbal scale, I could have actually gotten to the moon with just the command and service module, but we're trying to be realistic here. And now we just have to turn the light enhancement off. Take a long time to do that. And then we're going to loop around and go to the light side of the moon so we can land. That's a great shot right there. And now we are going to transfer Bob and Valentina Kerman into the lunar module before we set off on our descent. And for the lunar module, I basically took the gold panels from the Making History DLC, the Terrier engine, I believe that's what it's called, and the lunar module piece, that top right there, which is going to bring us back to the surface. I did clip an extra orange tank into the second stage, the one that's going to get us off to the moon. I don't know if that's cheating or not. A lot of players consider it cheating, but I really don't care. It gives you some extra wiggle room. And we're going to start our retrograde burn now. I'm going to try to aim inside one of the craters, so it's more of a flat area so we don't tip over. And unlike the actual Apollo missions where I believe they burned retrograde until they got close to the ground, where they kind of just went, oriented themselves almost straight up so they could pick a landing site, we're just going to be pointing retrograde, stop until we hit the surface. And there we go. We are slowing down and getting view from inside the cockpit. And now I'm going to try to stop from crashing into the surface. And we are now about to land, as long as I don't crash this. And come on, and there we go. We'll do our final descent. We are going to turn the thing off just so we can get a cinematic look. And just try not to hit it. No, we're going against retrograde. Turn the SA back off. Retrograde. Come on, retrograde. No, retrograde. Well, that was a smooth landing right there. Thankfully, we didn't crash. Well, the curls, they seem fine. And we're going to shut down that engine so when we stage, it doesn't activate. And now we just need to get the camera oriented and add some effects. So there we go. Oh, I forgot a ladder. That's right. So just jump off, do some flips there, walk around, make sure that you just don't sink into the surface, which was actually a concern of the Apollo astronauts just before the launch. Some experts had said that it would be possible that the Apollo astronauts would sink into the surface once they landed. And now for the most inspirational part of the mission and the most important, planting the flag. And after that jump, we are going to prepare to our ascent to get back into lunar orbit and then dock with the CSM. Now let's just type some words about first Kerbin, step on the moon, whatever. Then we're going to do a little EVA, walk around, see what's out there, see if any of the rocks are near us so we can pick up a sample. Nope. So just quick save and then get a great shot of the Kerbin, I guess, in the foreground. Redock the LEM and then make sure that engine's shut down and then quick save, because always quick save. Then we are going to wait till it's the right, like close and near us. I don't know the perfect window to launch from to a craft in lunar orbit. I just do it when it's almost above. And when you're descending from the moon, you can point sideways almost immediately. But because we landed in a crater, I did it a bit late. And we are just going to try to get as close as possible. Of course, we weren't on a perfectly equatorial orbit, so we are a bit out of sync with the spacecraft. We are going to try to get as close as possible, and thankfully I launched at the right time. Now we are just going to do that burn, and we are going to get pretty close. Now, I believe the Apollo astronauts had to wait one orbit until they got to the CSM. I'm not sure, but that is what I've heard. So what I'm going to do is just point retrograde to target, and thankfully we're not moving that fast, so you don't have to pull any start burning 3 kilometers from the target so you don't crash into it type thing or miss it. And I'm going to be trying to zero out our velocity with the reaction control system, try to get rid of some of that monopropellant. So once we got that, we're going to be using the mat lounge style of docking, where basically with one spacecraft, you set the other spacecraft's docking port as a target, and then you do the same for the other spacecraft. And once you do that, you can literally just you can just burn straight and hit your target. Of course, this does not work for space stations, because space stations aren't really maneuverable. They don't turn easily. And we are now entering on final approach. Just trying not to hit it too hard. It really doesn't matter. You could hit it at 6-7 meters per second. Nothing bad will happen. 7 actually might be pushing it, but let's just try to get a cinematic shot of it docking. There we go. We got Kerbin in the background, and the magnets work, and we are docked. So now what we're going to do is we are going to transfer Val and Bob into the command and service module. And once we got them transferred into the CSM, we're going to be ejecting the lunar module. And in real life, because the moon's gravity is the gravity field is absolutely terrible. There are parts where the gravity is a lot higher than other places, relative to spacecraft orbits. And in real life, all the lunar modules that were left in orbit actually crashed onto the moon because the gravity field screwed up their orbit so much. But with this Kerbal Space Program, they do, I believe, point physics. So the gravitational field is if you are on 60-kilometer orbit and then you have another spacecraft in 60-kilometer orbit, there's no difference. So it's impossible to simulate that. And now we're going to be planning our trajectory back to Kerbin. And I've found that from the moon, 30 kilometers is enough to slow down sufficiently while having the max time in re-entry. It's basically, if you want to get as much of your heat shield dissolved as possible, you go with 30 kilometers. I'm not going to be doing that because I want to hit water, not land, and I did not launch at a good window for hitting land. And now I'm going to add some effects to this shot, make it look a lot more pretty. Oh, that is a great shot right there with the Kerbin rotating in the background. And now we're going to get ready for re-entry. We're going to decouple the command module from the service module. And since we're landing at night, I'll raise the contrast. And now we're hitting the atmosphere right now. Oh, correction, I did decide to hit not hit the atmosphere, lower our periapsis to about 30 kilometers. And now we slow down sufficiently that we're not ionizing the particles in the atmosphere. Deploy that protective parachute covering. And now just wait, try to get rid of some of that RCS propellant that's weighing us down. Detach one of those drogue parachutes. Now these parachutes are actually meant for the Mercury and Gemini capsule replicas in the game, but because they look similar to the Apollo capsule parachutes, I just decided to use 3 of them. And we're going to be deploying 1 parachute early and then 2 to follow to lose enough velocity. And then just wait. I believe Apollo 12, they actually didn't deploy a parachute, but they still landed flying. The reason they used 3 was for redundancy, so if that situation happened, they wouldn't have to worry. The Soyuz capsules have only 1 parachute, and they actually have to deploy a couple thousand feet earlier than the Apollo capsules just to make sure it works. And we're having splashdown now, and we have successfully landed. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that video. Press the like button if you did, and subscribe if you're new to the channel. Thanks for watching.